honestly understand why it's over. I can go through the motions of walking away. I can give you the key and take my things back. I can find plenty of things to fill my days, but I don't know how not to think about you when it's late at night and quiet. And I know that I ought to be the one who is strong and just moves on, but I probably turn down your road, knock, knock on your door, fall back in your arms, wake up in the morning, hating myself in the way that I can't help the way I still want you. I just don't know how not to, how not to, how not to. I just don't know how not to, how not to, how not to. You're like second nature, baby, you're just like breathing. Melody that you hear and you can't forget. Time goes by and I still need you. Yeah, you're worth a heartbreak and a regret, but I don't know how not to think about you when it's late at night and quiet. And I know that I ought to be the one who is strong and just moves on, but I probably turn down your road, knock, knock on your door, fall back in your arms, wake up in the morning, hating myself in the way that I can't help the way I still want you. I just don't know how not to, how not to, how not to. I just don't know how not to, how not to, how not to. I don't know how not to think about you when it's late at night and quiet. I know that I ought to be the one who strong and just moves on, but I probably turn down your road, knock, knock on your door, fall back in your arms, wake up in the morning, hating myself in the way that I can't help the way I still want you. I just don't know how not to, how not to, how not to. I just don't know how not to, how not to, how not to.
Are you dreaming of something greater? A college degree, better job skills, a rewarding career? The Ohio Army National Guard can help you get the education you need to land the career you've always wanted. The Ohio National Guard Scholarship Program could pay 100% of your college tuition at Lakeland Community College. You're eligible for the scholarship as soon as you enlist, and you can attend school while serving right here in Northeast Ohio. Learn more about these great benefits by calling Staff Sergeant Danielle Davis at 440-225-3720 today. Call 440-225-3720 and go Guard.
Welcome in to the Mason Talk Sports Show. Today is Thursday, February 13th, and I have a lot of things to talk about. Coming up this weekend, we obviously have the NBA All-Star Weekend celebration festivities, all that good stuff. There are 2 NBA games tonight. I don't remember who exactly is playing. I feel like the Pelicans have a game, but other than tonight, the only NBA action for the rest of the week is the All-Star Game, so we're going to talk about that. I also have a lot of quarterback talk in terms of NFL, because really, in the National Football League, not a lot going on right now, but for this offseason, there is going to be an unprecedented amount of quarterback moves. Really, you never see too much, mixing and matching with quarterbacks in the NFL. Usually that's a pretty solid position, but there are a lot of guys who could be on the move coming up in the next few months. But before we get to that, I want to talk about the tiny piece of Cleveland Browns news which just broke a few minutes ago, and that is that the Cleveland Browns have hired Ryan Grigson to their front office. He is going to be on the staff of Andrew Berry. Now, Ryan Grigson was most recently with the Seattle Seahawks, and on his Wikipedia page, it's listed that he was the senior football consultant. And I'm not exactly sure what a senior football consultant does, but that was his last job. And a lot of people were kind of surprised by this. I know that at least on my Twitter timeline, there were a lot of people somewhat concerned by this, and I guess it's rightfully so. Ryan Grigson's not a huge name, obviously, not a ton of people know him, but the two things that he is known for in his career in the National Football League is that he worked with the Indianapolis Colts as their general manager from 2012 to 2016. So he was the guy creating the teams around Andrew Luck. And looking back on that time, he was a massive failure. He completely just messed up what the Colts had going. I mean, the Colts had the opportunity to be one of the, best franchises in the NFL for a decade or 15 years, and they blew it because while they got Andrew Luck, and while they did have success with Andrew Luck, I know that he took the Colts all the way, as far as the AFC Championship game at some points in his career. They had success, but Ryan Grigson did not build a team that could sustain success because he never put an offensive line around Andrew Luck, and Andrew Luck ended up suffering some massive injuries, and obviously he retired early at the age of 29. So looking back on Ryan Grigson's time in Indianapolis, it's pretty clear as to why he got fired in 2017. And then the second notable spot on his resume, the second notable place that he worked, in 2017, he was the senior personal executive on the 0-16 Cleveland Browns. So he was part of that front office that had Sashi Brown, it had Paul DePodesta, it obviously had Andrew Berry, and he was part of that front office that could never seem to get on the same page with Hugh Jackson, always fighting with Hugh Jackson, and it ended up being, one of the worst stretches of football that any team has ever seen. So, with not really an impressive resume, in fact, a somewhat terrifying resume, I can understand why fans would be concerned with this hire. But at the same time, I look at Ryan Grigson being part of this team, and I just don't care. Like, there's nothing about this hire that is frightening to me. There's nothing about it that makes me excited. I see this as a complete, just absolute piece of nothing news. Here's the thing. Ryan Grigson is going to come in, and he is going to be a minimal part of the Cleveland Browns front office. There are only 3 people who are going to be making decisions in terms of player personnel. And those 3 people are Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski, and Paul DePodesta. That's it. That's the 3. That's all who matters in the Cleveland Browns front office. Now, obviously, they are going to have the watching eyes of Jimmy Haslam over them at all times. But Ryan Grigson coming into this team, it doesn't affect the players. It doesn't affect the offensive line. It doesn't affect the philosophy or how this team's going to be run. He's simply being brought in to be a advisor or a voice or somebody that Andrew Berry could potentially lean on if he ever needs any sort of assistance. As I said before, he last worked with the Seattle Seahawks. He was the senior football consultant, and I'm assuming he is going to be in a similar role here with the Cleveland Browns. He's probably just going to be in here to consult and maybe possibly give his opinions on a couple of issues, and he'll probably just be here to assist Andrew Berry in whatever way he needs. I don't care that Ryan Grigson's here. I don't think it means anything. I'm not looking at this panicking and, saying to myself, oh no, the 0-16 Browns are back, or they're gonna drop the ball on Baker Mayfield just like they did with Andrew Luck. I don't think that that's true. I truly think that this piece of news means nothing. But yeah, so that was the top of the show Cleveland Browns update. Ryan Grigson back with the team. And now we're going to move on. And as I said before, I want to talk about quarterbacks, because there are a lot of interesting quarterbacks who are probably going to be on the market today. And there was a little bit of news that came out yesterday about a few people. And the first person I want to talk about is the person who I labeled the most complex and confusing quarterback in the National Football League, and that's Jameis Winston. Now, Jameis Winston was the first overall pick. I believe it was in 2015. And ever since then, he's simply been a confusing quarterback. It's been a mixed bag of results. He's had really bad seasons. He's had a couple of good years, a couple of years where he looked good. I know in his second year, he was able to get the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to 9-7. But this past season was truly the most up and down season that an NFL quarterback could ever have. Jameis Winston led the National Football League in passing yards. And after this season, the only other humans in the history of mankind to have a season where they threw for more yards than what Jameis Winston did this season were Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, and Ben Roethlisberger. So in terms of passing yards, this season was a great one for Jameis Winston. He was right up there with some legendary names. And part of that is, of course, due to Bruce Arians, who is his new head coach this year. And Bruce Arians is known for being one of those guys who really likes to let it rip in terms of passing. Bruce Arians is one of those kind of air raid type, coaches in the National Football League. But despite the criticism, Jameis Winston did have the most passing yards in the NFL, and that's something that you can't just ignore. He also had 33 touchdown passes, which is really good. That puts him up there in the top of the NFL. That's right up there with what Lamar Jackson did. Lamar Jackson threw for 37 touchdowns, and he was the MVP of the league. So if you just looked at Jameis's passing yards and passing touchdowns, you would say, hey, this is one of the elite NFL quarterbacks. But the biggest, most impressive stat that Jameis Winston had in the 2019 season was his 30 interceptions thrown. 30 picks. Jameis Winston went 30 for 30 touchdown passes, 30 interceptions. Not many NFL quarterbacks could do that. But Jameis did. And that's why Jameis Winston is so perplexing. Because he shows great signs of potential, and then he also shows moments where he looks like he has no idea what he's doing. And the reason that Jameis Winston came to mind when I was preparing for my show last night is because one of the headline stories on ESPN was that Jameis Winston got LASIK laser eye surgery, so he had his eyesight repaired. And, that's obviously, jokes are going to come with that because of the 30 interceptions. But I was just kind of wondering, what is Jameis Winston and what's going to become of his career? Because he's definitely not safe with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Bruce Arians, he's been asked about Jameis multiple times, and he has never once committed to Jameis Winston as being the future quarterback or even the current guy in Tampa Bay. They've had a lot of mixed results. I mean, you talk about the 30 interceptions, you talk about the fact that it doesn't seem like he knows how to determine if a player's on his team or the other team. But then he also comes out and he has games like he had in Week 5 against the Los Angeles Rams. In Week 5, Jameis went 28 for 41 for 385 yards, 4 touchdown passes, only 1 interception, and he led the Buccaneers to a 55-40 victory over the Los Angeles Rams. And that's not that's not a terrible team. The Rams are coming off a year when they were in the Super Bowl, and according to TeamRankings.com, they had the 12th best pass defense in all of football. So Jameis went out and he had a great game, 4 touchdown passes against the team that is supposedly the best pass defense in all of football. Jameis Winston is truly the most perplexing quarterback in the National Football League. Because when he's great, he's really great. He's legendarily great. But when he's bad, he's awful. And what makes this even more complicated is the fact that he is going to be a free agent He's going to be on the open market, and he doesn't want to give up any money. He doesn't want to concede any sort of money on his next contract. Jameis Winston said that in free agency, he and his agent are going to be looking for a contract in the range of $30 to $35 million a year. And I can't believe that Jameis would ask for that, number one, and I don't believe that he would expect to get that. I mean, the audacity. $30 million a year. That's $1 million for every interception he threw this past season. I think that Jameis should get another shot, but I don't know who's going to give it to him if he's asking for that kind of money. I mean, he's shown potential, and he hasn't really been put in a good situation in Tampa Bay. Since he was drafted in 2015, he's had 3 head coaches. Those head coaches were Lovie Smith, Dirk Cutter, and Bruce Arians, and he's had 3 offensive coordinators, Dirk Cutter, Todd Monken, and Byron Leftwich. Now, Todd Monken, as soon as I saw that name, I was like, hey, maybe that's why Jameis Winston has struggled in the middle of his career. I mean, when Baker Mayfield played under Todd Monken this past season, he looked awful. So maybe Jameis Winston just needs a good coaching staff and a good support staff behind him to make him reach that potential that we seem to see every other week. I don't think that Jameis Winston should be asking for $30 to $35 million a year. I don't think he's going to get it. But I think that he does deserve a second chance, somewhere not with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't think he's going to be successful with Tampa Bay. They've failed him. They've never really put a great coaching staff around him. They've never been able to get the most out of him. I mean, he's flashed potential. He's shown that he can make NFL caliber throws, and he's shown that he can put together a winning season like he did in year 2, 9-7. But his coaches have never been able to get the most out of his potential or the most out of his talent. I think that if you get him a good coach, he can thrive. If you put him in a good situation, he can be successful. I mean, he's only 26 years old. And there are a lot of quarterbacks in NFL history who were able to be successful despite throwing a lot of interceptions. I mean, if you look up NFL quarterbacks in terms of most interceptions thrown, Peyton Manning is 9th on that list with 251. Dan Marino's 8th. Johnny Unitas is 7th. And Brett Favre is 1st. Brett Favre threw 336 interceptions in his career. You can work around interceptions. You just have to have a good coach and a good system to put that quarterback into. I hope he ends up on a good team, but no good team's going to give him $30 to $35 million. I mean, the quarterbacks who are making that type of money are Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, and Jared Goff. And all of them are better quarterbacks than Jameis. I mean, if Jameis Winston really wants to be successful and if he really wants to be put in a good situation, he's going to have to humble himself and ask for like $20 million. Only $20 million. But I definitely think that if he wants to be a good NFL quarterback, and if he wants to sort of revive his career, he has to leave Tampa Bay. The one team that came to mind when I was thinking about where Jameis could possibly be successful is the Indianapolis Colts. Because the Colts have a good situation. They have a good offensive line. You have immediately a great number 1 option in T.Y. Hilton. And Frank Reich, the team's head coach, he was able to get the most out of Carson Wentz in Carson Wentz's second season when Wentz was, an MVP candidate for all year until he got hurt. And I just think that would be a good situation. Give him a good offensive line, give him a good coach, give him a good number 1 receiver, and hope that he's able to make the adjustments needed to, be a good NFL quarterback. So that's my take on Jameis Winston. I think he can be good, but I think that part of it's on him and part of it... That's why he's the most complex quarterback in the NFL, because part of it's on him and part of it's not. Speaking of NFL quarterbacks, I also want to talk about Andy Dalton. Now, I think that everybody in the world knows that Andy Dalton is not going to be the quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals much longer. I mean, we all know the Cincinnati Bengals are going to be led week 1 by Joe Burrow. They're taking Joe Burrow first overall. And according to Ian Rappaport, the Cincinnati Bengals are willing to work with Andy Dalton on a trade. So they're willing to work with him. They're looking to get him into a situation that he's okay with. And one of those teams that's been mentioned oftentimes when talking about Andy Dalton is the New England Patriots. And the reason why is because Peter King, who is a veteran NFL writer, he said a couple weeks ago that Andy Dalton is the type of guy that the New England Patriots would be intrigued with. And he's the type of guy that Bill Belichick would be intrigued with finishing up his career. And the more I think about it, the more I think that would be a good pairing for what both sides want. Because obviously Andy Dalton, I mean, he's 32 and he's spent his entire career on the Cincinnati Bengals. And that's enough to drive any man crazy. And for Andy Dalton, I'm assuming all he wants is a good situation. And the New England Patriots are the best situation in football. You have the best coach by far, one of the best coaches in NFL history, and you have a coach who's been able to be successful with an aging and ailing Tom Brady for the past few years. Now, obviously a lot of things would have to go, a lot of dominoes would have to fall in order for this to happen. Number one, Tom Brady would have to leave New England and go elsewhere in free agency, which is not too far out of the realm of possibility. But then also, the Patriots would have to decide that they don't want to go with the young guy that they had on their bench. They don't want to go draft and they don't want to go free agency, and they have to decide they want Andy Dalton. They can't just say, we're going to pick him up in free agency. They have to go out and they have to trade for him. And I think in this next season, Andy Dalton would be bringing along like a $17 million cap hit. So a lot of things would have to be shored up for this move to happen. But I definitely wouldn't be shocked if Andy Dalton were the next quarterback of the New England Patriots. Andy Dalton, he's had pretty much one good season, and that was back in 2013. In 2013, he had 4,293 yards, 33 touchdowns, and he led the Bengals to an 11-5 record. Now, ever since then, his play has been pretty much steadily declining, and he's never won a playoff game. He's never once gotten past the wild card round. And part of that's on the Bengals organization, which has been a mess, but part of that's also on Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton's never really been an overly impressive NFL quarterback. He's always kind of just been one of those guys that's, smack dab right in the middle. But the New England Patriots are the type of organization that's shown that they can win without an overly impressive quarterback. I mean, obviously you had Matt Castle, and Matt Castle was able to be successful in that one season he had in New England. I think he won like 11 games after Tom Brady tore his ACL, and, he made a ton of money off that. Jimmy Garoppolo is a good quarterback, but, he's not Tom Brady, and still the Patriots were able to win games with Jimmy Garoppolo. And even these past few years, Tom Brady has not been himself. He is 42 years old. His body's wearing down. And the Patriots were still able to make the wild card round, despite the fact that Tom Brady is, an old man. So the Patriots have shown they can win with subpar quarterback play. And if you bring in Andy Dalton, Lord knows you're getting subpar quarterback play. So I would be really interested to see if, Andy Dalton could be successful in the Patriot system. And I think another person who'd be really interested in that is Bill Belichick. Because Bill Belichick has pretty much, he's checked off every single box that you can check off in terms of legacy. He's got one of the, best records in NFL history. He's one of only a few coaches with 200 career wins. The dude's got 6 Super Bowl rings with the Patriots. I'm pretty sure he's got one with the New York Giants as well. The only thing he hasn't done is he hasn't really ever been great without Tom Brady. And if you bring in Andy Dalton and you're able to be a competitive NFL team, I mean, the dude, you don't even have to win the Super Bowl with Andy Dalton. All you need to do is make the playoffs and get past the wild card round. That would be the ultimate Bill Belichick, move. The ultimate Bill Belichick legacy, solidifier. I think that would be the ultimate just, that's it. And there's nothing you can say against Bill Belichick. So I would be interested in that. And another thing I'm interested in is the future of the Lions starting quarterback, Matt Stafford. Now, Matt Stafford is kind of similar to Andy Dalton in a way. I mean, Matt Stafford's got far better physical traits and he has, far better career numbers. But he's also the type of quarterback that's been stuck with one franchise that can never seem to have any playoff success whatsoever. And he spent the bulk of last season sidelined with a back injury. And according to WDIV TV in Detroit, sources close to the situation say that trade talks surrounding Matthew Stafford have been going on for a long time. Now, Lions general manager Bob Quinn denied these reports, but I think that it's pretty safe to say the Lions have at least considered moving on from Matthew Stafford, and they absolutely should. I think that every single smart team in the NFL is always considering what they can do to improve that position, except for maybe the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Lions can absolutely get better than what they have with Matthew Stafford. I don't think that Matthew Stafford is their ceiling. And I think that they're really limiting themselves with what he can be. Like, I don't think that that's a pairing that can fully work together forever. Matthew Stafford went 9-7 with the Lions in both 2017 and 2016. But those were his last winning seasons, and he hasn't had a double-digit win season since 2014. So he's kind of just been stuck in limbo, as have the Detroit Lions, for pretty much a decade. But he still showed that he can be a relatively good quarterback. I mean, before his injury, Matthew Stafford had 2,499 passing yards and 19 touchdowns, and he got injured in November. So, for the month of November, those are some pretty good numbers for a 32-year-old quarterback. I think that he can still be successful, but I think that the Lions need to know sometimes you just have to move on. If you want to get past mediocrity, and if you want to get past the first or second round of the playoffs, sometimes you need to know that you just have to move on from that quarterback. A lot of teams get stuck treading water in terms of quarterbacks. A lot of teams get stuck just in the absolute abyss of, 8, 9, 10 wins, but nothing more than that. And at that point, you kind of have to realize that either your coach is failing the team or it's your quarterback. And the Lions have brought in a couple different coaches, but they've always had the same quarterback. And no combinations have been able to work. I would say for the Lions to be successful, and I don't think they'll do this because they haven't been successful for a long, long time. They're one of only 4 teams to never, ever make the Super Bowl. But I think that if the Lions were a smart team, they would look at what teams like the Patriots, they would look at teams like the Ravens, and they would look at teams like the Chiefs and see what they did to ultimately reach the success they wanted. If you look at the New England Patriots, they had a good quarterback back in the early 2000s, and that good quarterback was Drew Bledsoe. Now, Drew Bledsoe was good, and they thought that they were able to be a competitive team, and they were a competitive team with Drew Bledsoe. But Bill Belichick, the ultimate NFL genius, was smart enough to realize that for the Patriots to be truly successful, they had to move on. And they did move on to Tom Brady. That worked out pretty well for them. But even more recently, if you look at the Baltimore Ravens, Joe Flacco won a Super Bowl with that franchise. Joe Flacco earned the respect of the entire city, the entire fan base, and of course, he earned the respect of his head coach, John Harbaugh. They didn't want to move on from Joe Flacco. They kept him for probably longer than they should have. But eventually, late in the season, or maybe it was like mid-season, 2018, the Ravens finally moved on to Lamar Jackson. And while Lamar Jackson hasn't had any postseason success at all yet, he has shown that he's far better than Joe Flacco and that he can be an MVP caliber quarterback. And even if you look at this past season, the Kansas City Chiefs had a good quarterback. And that good quarterback was Alex Smith. Now, Alex Smith took him as far as the AFC Championship game. So he was winning games with them. He was showing that he could be a good competitive quarterback in the NFL. But the Chiefs were never able to get over the mountain. They were never able to get to the Super Bowl until they moved on from Alex Smith and promoted Patrick Mahomes. That worked really, really well for the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think that the Detroit Lions need to be looking at Matthew Stafford, and I think they need to come to the self-realization that, hey, he's a good quarterback, but is he the type of quarterback that can get us ultimately where we desire to be? I personally don't think he can. But I also think that this season for the Lions, there's not really going to be an option available that they should go get. I mean, you're not going to get Joe Burrow. He's going first overall to the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't think that Tua Tagovailoa is the right type of guy for that franchise. I think that if the Detroit Lions were super smart and if they wanted to kind of model after what the Browns did, I'm not saying the Browns are super smart, but it was a good idea, then they would trade Matthew Stafford to fake interest in Tua, which would ultimately convince the Miami Dolphins to trade up to the second pick, and then Chase Young, defensive end, Ohio State, everybody knows him, he would fall to the third pick, waiting for the Detroit Lions, who could then take Chase Young, tank for this next season, and get Trevor Lawrence in 2021. That would be the ultimate, step-up game plan for the Detroit Lions. I mean, you could get Chase Young or you could get Tua, and you could try to run with either Matthew Stafford or Tua. But I think that the best option available would be taking Chase Young, moving on from Matthew Stafford, admitting that you're stuck in limbo, and going forward trying to get a guy like Trevor Lawrence, who has the potential to be a, really, really good quarterback in the National Football League. That's just my game plan. I mean, who knows what the Lions are going to do? The Lions might just stick with Matthew Stafford, and, that would be fine. I mean, he's a fine quarterback. He had a good season last year until he got hurt. He still has the potential to be a good quarterback. He's only 32. But I think it would be better to move on from him. And I'm sure you would be able to get some pretty solid return for him in terms of a trade. Teams are going to be looking for quarterbacks. Maybe somebody like, the Chicago Bears. They could be a potential landing spot, although I don't think they'd trade it to him because, very close in terms of division, same conference, all that stuff. I don't think he'd go to the Bears. But when you're talking about Matthew Stafford, you could look at a team like the Los Angeles Chargers, who are looking for a quarterback, or maybe even somebody like the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are probably going to be quarterback needy in the relative future, or maybe even somebody like the New England Patriots if they want to get crazy. Who knows? I'm just saying that if I was the Detroit Lions, I would be looking to move on from Matthew Stafford and move into the future, like some of the other good NFL teams have done.
Callan needed a car loan, and she turned to Cardinal Credit Union.
Well, I came to Cardinal and talked to Dietrich about getting a car loan, and he explained everything about the financing step by step, so I understood it.
Being a member of the credit union already, Callan knew that we offered the lowest rates possible.
What I like best about Cardinal is the money that I saved and the money that I'm going to save.
What she said.
For new or used auto loans, it's easy. Just call Cardinal at 440-266-2200. Stop in a branch or apply online at cardinalcu.com. Cardinal President Christine Blake.
Listening to your story, saving you money, anyone can join. Cardinal. People helping people.
Cardinal is open to anyone who lives, works, worships, or attends school in Lake Cuyahoga, Geauga, Ashtabula, Portage, Summit, Mahoning, Trumbull, or Columbiana counties. This institution is not federally insured. Deposits are insured by American Share Insurance up to $250,000 per account. Loans subject to credit approval. Cardinal Credit Union. People helping people.
So I've got one more quarterback segment coming up, and I swear, moving on to something that's not quarterbacks. Now that I'm going through this, I'm realizing the entire first part of the show was solely quarterback talk, but this is a quarterback that I have become a just strong defender of, and that, of course, is Baker Mayfield. And I'm coming to the realization that somehow Baker Mayfield has become one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the National Football League. He went from being one of the most overrated in the summer of, 2019, when everybody was talking about him being a potential MVP, including myself. I'm guilty of that as well. And now in the, spring, summer of 2020, people are talking about whether or not he's even worth it for the Browns to keep. And I thought that this was shown, extremely well on ESPN. They had a segment a couple of days ago. It was on Get Up. So it was ESPN's, premier morning show, all that. And their segment was titled, big bold font on the bottom of the screen, "Is it too soon to give up on Baker Mayfield?" I mean, think about that. Think about that question that the worldwide leader in sports is asking. Is it too soon to give up on Baker Mayfield? I mean, the video should have just been a 2-second clip of their panel of experts saying, yes, it is too soon to give up on Baker Mayfield. I think that that's dumb, and I know why ESPN did it. They do it for ratings, and look, they got me. They got my view. They got me to watch, and I'm sure they got, a ton of other Browns fans to watch. But this is a super easy question. Yes, it's way too soon to give up on Baker Mayfield. I still think Baker can be one of the better quarterbacks, even a top 10 quarterback in the National Football League. Giving up on him is such a strong reaction to one season of evidence. When you have such a small sample size, only 2 seasons, we only have 2 seasons of Baker Mayfield play and of evidence to support either case. When you have a small sample like that, you can't just ignore his first season. I mean, you can ignore, if somebody came at you and they were like, I think that so-and-so, I think Mitchell Trubisky can be a good NFL quarterback, and you're like, well, why? Why do you think Mitchell Trubisky's still good? And they're like, well, he was good as a rookie. That doesn't make sense, because Mitchell Trubisky's now, 4 years removed from his rookie season? Baker Mayfield's rookie year was last year. It wasn't that long ago that he was absolutely tearing up the National Football League. With a small sample size like 2 seasons, you can't just ignore what he did and what he was in 2018. Let's look at what he did in the 2018 season. He defeated the odds playing for Hugh Jackson. I mean, nobody else in Cleveland was able to be successful with Hugh Jackson. I mean, Deshaun Kaiser, the man went 0-16. Cody Kessler's gone. I haven't seen Cody Kessler. Who else do we even have on that team? Kevin Hogan. Kevin Hogan's gone. All the quarterbacks who played under Hugh Jackson were eliminated from the universe shortly thereafter. But Baker Mayfield wasn't. Baker Mayfield was able to throw for 27 touchdown passes. He was able to get 7 wins, which was a 7-win improvement from the prior season when the Browns went 0-16. I think that what Baker did in his first season and what he was able to accomplish as a rookie rightfully earned him the MVP hype that he received in the offseason of 2019. So that was Baker's first year. He was great, and he showed potential that he could be really, really great for the Cleveland Browns. But then you also have to look at 2019. He had 22 touchdowns and 21 interceptions, a 6-10 record. But then you also have to look at the contributing factors to that 6-10 record. He had the worst coach in the NFL, along with the worst overall staff. I mean, you had Freddie Kitchens, worst coach in the NFL. You had Todd Monken, who was actively telling other teams that you had no idea what you were doing. Todd Monken was a moron. You had an offensive line that went one season from the second best in the league to 23rd. So the offensive line drastically fell apart in 2019. And your top 2 wide receivers played the entire season injured. Odell Beckham Jr. played the entire season with a core muscle injury, and Jarvis Landry had something going on. He had some sort of, I think it was like a knee injury. Your top 2 wide receivers were hurt, and so was your, starting tight end, David Njoku. Also, Odell Beckham didn't practice all summer. So, you also had that going against you. There were a lot of things that were going against Baker Mayfield in 2019. And he looked bad. 20 interceptions. That's really, really bad. When you have any more than 20 interceptions, that's when it gets really concerning. When you have any more than 15 interceptions, it gets concerning. I was making fun of Jameis Winston a few minutes ago, talking about his, 30 interceptions. Baker Mayfield was only 9 interceptions away from being what Jameis was. That's really bad. But I also think that you can't just ignore the fact that the Browns have basically built an entire staff whose sole purpose is to save Baker Mayfield. Kevin Stefanski was brought in to save Baker Mayfield. If Baker was as terrible as everybody was saying, Freddie Kitchens probably would have gotten a second chance, or at least John Dorsey. But those guys got fired. And they were fired because everybody in Cleveland knew Baker Mayfield had talent, and the Browns were wasting it. So for ESPN to come out and say, is it too soon to give up on Baker Mayfield? I think it's a terrible, terrible segment. It's a terrible take. I don't think anybody on the show actually said yes, but the fact that they're even asking it, it just shows that, number one, they have nothing else to talk about, and number two, they know that Browns fans will react angrily and give them those views and ratings that they are so desperate for. All right, that's NFL talk. We're done with the National Football League for the day, because I want to move on to basketball. Because finally, yesterday, the Cleveland Cavaliers were able to pull away a home victory. Cavaliers beat the Atlanta Hawks. I'm looking for the final score right now. I believe the final score, here we go, 127-105. So you beat the Atlanta Hawks pretty thoroughly. And the reason why this was such a big deal, especially right before you take your, week and a half off, is because last night's victory was the Cavs' first win at home since December 23rd of last year. The Cavaliers had not won a game at home since they beat the Hawks, which is, that just shows how bad the Hawks are, but that was the last time they won at home. So you're finally able to pry away the victory. And I thought the Cavs looked really good yesterday. It wasn't just some, ugly victory that you had to really scrape away from the hands of the Atlanta Hawks. I thought the Cavs' young core played pretty well. Collin Sexton finished the game with 23 points and 6 assists. Larry Nance Jr. had 23 points and 12 rebounds. Andre Drummond had 14 points, 15 rebounds, and 2 blocks. And Kevin Porter Jr. also had a pretty good game off the bench. Speaking of off the bench, Tristan Thompson, 27 off the bench, 27 points. And the craziest part of his game, he hit 3 3-pointers. Tristan Thompson, who coming into this season had never hit a 3 before in his life. So the Cavs were playing fun, they were playing loose, they were playing fast. That was my big takeaway. They were playing really fast basketball. When Collin Sexton got the ball, he would just go. There was no stopping. There was no trying to set up an offense. And there was no trying to get the ball to Kevin Love, which I thought was pretty interesting. The fact that as soon as Kevin Love is out of the lineup, the Cavs start to play significantly better as a team. Now, I don't want to hate on Kevin Love, and I don't want to disrespect one of the all-time legends in terms of the Cleveland Cavaliers, but I do think it's interesting that as soon as he's not on the floor, the Cavs start to play better. Everybody starts to be more free. Even Darius Garland, I think he had 7 assists to finish out the game. It was a good game for the Cleveland Cavaliers. I was happy with what we saw. Obviously, a win at this point doesn't really matter that much. The Cavs are far, far, far out of the playoff hunt. But with as bad as things have been this whole season, it's nice to at least see your players who are supposed to be the young building blocks of the team be competitive, which is, it's the most we can ask for. Just be competitive. So it was a good game. I saw a lot of the conversation on Twitter, which of course, everybody on Twitter is negative. I actually hate Twitter, and I don't know why I still have it. I guess I only use it for news, but I was really happy with what Collin Sexton did throughout the game. I thought that he played one of his better overall games of the season because he wasn't just doing what he always does, which is head down, get to the basket, and score. I mean, he's good at that. He's good at just putting his head down and running past whoever tries to stop him. But he had his head up. He was looking to make passes. He was looking to keep people involved. And, he was getting the ball to Tristan Thompson in good spots for double T. And I thought it was a good game from Collin Sexton. But a lot of people were upset and talking about how he's... I know one of the criticisms was, he doesn't have a move. He doesn't have anything special about him. He's just fast. And I was like, well, why is that a criticism? Collin Sexton being one of the fastest players in the league, I don't think that's a criticism of Collin Sexton. I'm upset because he can run past every person on the basketball court. It's crazy, but I think pretty much consensus everybody has been happy with Kevin Porter Jr. Kevin Porter Jr. looks like he's the real deal, and he looks like that he can actually be a starting two guard for a competitive NBA team, not just the Cleveland Cavaliers, but a team that wants to be successful in the playoffs. I mean, he's got everything going for him. He's got a good handle. He's got a good separation move. He's good with the step back. He can hit, catch and shoot threes. He's a good finisher through contact, very athletic, and he's a pretty good defender. So, while Cavaliers fans may still be split on Collin Sexton as a player, at least we can all come together as a fan base and agree it's really fun to watch Kevin Porter Jr. So, coming up this weekend, we have the NBA All-Star break, and I'm going to be completely honest. I never get excited for the All-Star break. And part of that's probably because I don't have any players in it, except for Collin Sexton. I mean, it was really hopeless leading up into this week because before Collin Sexton was named the injury replacement on the Rising Stars team for Tyler Hero, the Cavaliers for real had no players in this entire All-Star weekend. But at least we have Collin Sexton. And at least we have a couple of entertaining events, and when I say a couple, I mean only a couple. And those are the dunk contest and the three-point contests. And I want to give my preview for each of those. Now, I would say I'm more excited for the dunk contest because I like the dunk contest, especially when you have a couple big-name players in it. And this year you have a couple big-name players, a couple of players that people are interested in. The dunk contest for this season is Dwight Howard, Pat Connaughton, Derrick Jones Jr., and Aaron Gordon. Now, everybody has their own special set of skills for this dunk contest, but I want to talk about what each player has going for them, who I want to win, and who I think will win. Now, let's start with Dwight Howard. Everybody in the NBA knows Dwight Howard. Superstar at one point, completely fell off, was irrelevant, and now he's kind of a nice little bench player for the Los Angeles Lakers. Going for Dwight Howard in this dunk contest. Obviously, he is still pretty athletic. He still has a good vertical. You have the nostalgia factor because Dwight Howard had one of the best dunk contests ever back in 2009. So he's shown that he can do it, but it was a long, long time ago when the NBA was a very different league. You have the theatrical aspect because, as we all know, Dwight Howard, he sure does love to make it a show. He had the whole Clark Kent getting into the phone booth thing last time, and he came out as Superman, all that. And then, of course, he has the jersey. He has that number 39 jersey, and when you wear the purple and gold, it just gets a different reaction out of everybody. So that's what Dwight Howard has going for him. Pat Connaughton is almost the complete opposite. He is a mystery. He was a second-round pick of the Portland Trailblazers a few years back. He was also a minor league baseball player. I think it was for the Orioles farm system, which is pretty interesting. He's been a role player for the Milwaukee Bucks, and he is an absolutely absurd athlete. His combine, when he was at the NBA Draft Combine, he had a 44-inch max vertical jump. And in terms of standing vertical, he had a 37-inch standing vertical. So he can jump out of the building. And he's a mystery. And every year you kind of have that mystery contestant who comes out and puts together a really good, couple dunks, and it gets social media going crazy. And I think that that's what Pat Connaughton has going for him. Now, Derrick Jones Jr. is probably the player that I am least interested in this dunk contest because we've seen him in a couple other dunk contests, and we know what he's bringing. He's a pretty consistently good dunker. He was named to 3 out of the 4 last dunk contests, and he's a good athlete. And that's pretty much all you can say about Derrick Jones Jr. I'm going to be completely honest. I'm not looking forward to Derrick Jones Jr. I'm sure he's probably going to win now, but I'm definitely more excited for Aaron Gordon. Now, Aaron Gordon, what he has going for him, the revenge. He absolutely has a revenge factor going because back in 2016, Aaron Gordon had one of the best dunk contest performances since Vince Carter. His dunks were far more impressive than what Zach LaVine did, and still, Zach LaVine was able to win that dunk contest. But Aaron Gordon, he's looking for revenge. He's one of the most creative dunkers in the league, and it just seems like this might be his time. His time to shine. He deserved it in 2016, and I'm hoping he gets it in 2020. Who I want to win, I would love to see Aaron Gordon win the dunk contest. I would love to see it. I really want to see him win. I want to see him get that, dunk contest trophy that he deserves and that he deserved back in 2016. The only thing that he might have going against him is that he's going to have to come out and outdo what he did back when he, jumped over the mascot on the hoverboard. Because everybody's going to be remembering that, and everybody's going to have their expectations high. That's who I want to win, Aaron Gordon. But who I think is going to win, and I hope this doesn't happen, I think the winner of the 2020 dunk contest is going to be Derrick Jones Jr. And the reason I don't want that to win is just because it's not interesting. I mean, we know he can dunk, he can jump, he's a great athlete. I don't want to see Derrick Jones Jr. win, but I think he's going to. Moving on, 3-point contest. Now, the 3-point contest is also something that peaked back in 2016 when you had Steph Curry and Klay Thompson going up against each other. But you have a pretty solid cast of characters this season. Davis Bertans, Joe Harris, Trae Young, Zach LaVine, Devontae Graham, Buddy Hield, Duncan Robinson. And Damian Lillard was named to the 3-point contest, but he is not going to be competing because of an injury. The person replacing him will be Devin Booker. So that's a pretty solid 3-point contest. Now, the format's a little bit different this season. There will be 2 extra shots, which are placed 6 feet behind the 3-point arc, each of which is worth 3 points. So there will be a 70-second time limit and 40 total points available, which I know some people were like, why the heck would you change the 3-point contest? But, we see NBA shooters more and more often nowadays shooting from that range, especially guys like Trae Young and like Damian Lillard. They can really extend to, 6 feet behind the 3-point arc, which is crazy. Before the news came out that Damian Lillard was going to miss this with his injury, I was going to pick Damian Lillard to win because he's on an absolute tear. He's a great shooter, and I think that he's the type of guy that wants to go out and win this, even though in reality it's really a meaningless event. But since Lillard will not be competing, I think it's going to come down to either the defending 3-point champion, Joe Harris, or Trae Young. Now, Joe Harris is averaging he has a 42% 3-point completion percentage, which is pretty solid, and Trae Young's completion percentage is 37%. So Joe Harris is a slightly more consistent shooter, but for my pick to win, I think it's going to be Trae Young, simply because I think Trae Young can get hot. I think he can get hot to the point where he won't miss for a long time. And I also think that he can take advantage of those extra three-pointers from 6 feet behind the arc. So those are my winners for All-Star Weekend. I think it's going to be Trae Young for the three-point contest, and I think it's going to be Derrick Jones Jr. for the dunk contest. And that's all I want to talk about. I'm not talking about the All-Star Game. I'm not talking about the skills contest. I'm not talking about the Rising Stars contest, although if Collin Sexton tears it up, I'm going to be coming in here Tuesday ready to, throw down in defense of Collin Sexton. But the one All-Star Game topic that I have left is Devin Booker. So the Devin Booker All-Star story is truly hilarious because he has been a good player for a couple of years now. And I think a lot of people thought that this would be the year he would make it into the All-Star Game because he's been around for 5 seasons. This year he's averaging 26 points per game, which is 10th in the NBA in scoring. And he still didn't make it. He still was not initially voted into the All-Star Game. And after that, he was mad. He was a really, really, mad fellow. What Devin Booker said, his quote was, "It was always a goal of mine to be an all-star, but it just reproves the point that the NBA is different than the game that I fell in love with at the beginning, and now it's just entertainment, drama, and a political-filled league," which is a hilarious quote. He's calling the NBA entertainment, drama, and politics, which is exactly what it is, but it's just funny now that Devin Booker is in the All-Star Game after making those comments, because if we're going to be completely honest, when Damian Lillard went down with his injury, my first thought was, I think it should absolutely be Ja Morant. I think that Ja Morant was deserving of an All-Star Game appearance, and I still think he's deserving of it. I wanted to see Ja Morant in the All-Star Game, but I also didn't want to see a grown man cry, and Lord knows we would have seen Devin Booker cry. I mean, Rudy Gobert cried last season when he didn't make the All-Star Game. And Devin Booker's been crying all season. This past week, he's been really upset about it. And, I think it definitely should have been Morant because Ja is averaging 17 and 7. So he's contributing in the scoring aspect as well as assists. But the main reason why is because Ja Morant is the leader of a Memphis Grizzlies team that is 8th in the Western Conference. They are competing for a wild card. They are competing for the 8th seed, a playoff spot. Ja Morant is the leader of a playoff team. He's one of the most exciting players in the NBA, and he's doing it all as a rookie. Devin Booker's in his 5th season. He's not really the leader of that Phoenix Suns team. He's just kind of there. And if you look at the Western Conference standings, Phoenix is 12th. They are 12th. They are 4 spots out of the playoffs again. Devin Booker has never been able to get success in Phoenix. He's never been able to lead that team. He is a pure scorer on a team that's doing nothing. But he's an all-star. And I thought it was funny because when Damian Lillard went down with his injury, and when Damian Lillard announced that he was going to be missing the All-Star Weekend, he specifically said that he wanted it to be a guy like Devin Booker. He wanted Devin Booker to be the guy replacing him. And that was funny to me because, Devin Booker, he came out with the whole, it's all politics. The NBA is all politics. And then you've got, Damian Lillard going out and advocating for Devin Booker to make it in over the probably more deserving Ja Morant. I just think that that's a pretty, political move there by Damian Lillard. And, in the end, it doesn't really matter. We're talking about the last all-star spot on the roster. Devin Booker's probably going to play a good amount. He's going to be on Team LeBron, so he will be going up against the team that Giannis Antetokounmpo put together. But, Ja Morant, he will be an all-star at some point. He's a really good player. one of the most exciting in the league. I think it would have been really exciting to see him in this All-Star game. And I'm just a little bit upset because Devin Booker is a pure scorer on a team that isn't really doing anything. And they've never done anything since they drafted Devin Booker 5 years ago. But like Devin Booker said, it's all politics. And that's all the All-Star game really is. You know, fans vote. The players, they go out there and they promote themselves. And whoever's popular, that's going to be who's showing up. And at this point in time, Devin Booker is a more popular player than Ja Morant. But it's whatever. It is whatever. So last thing I want to talk about today. As I said before, the Cleveland Cavaliers do not have an All-Star in this game. And they have not had an All-Star since LeBron back in 2018, which is to be expected because we are in the middle of a rebuild. But when looking at this roster, I don't think that there's necessarily a clear future All-Star in this lineup. I think that there are guys who definitely have the potential, but I don't think there's a clear All-Star. So I wanted to ask the question, who could be the next Cleveland Cavaliers All-Star? The next Cavaliers player to represent the team in the All-Star game. Now, first, we got to talk about who it's not going to be. I don't think it's going to be Andre Drummond. Although Andre Drummond is a two-time All-Star, he's probably the best player on this team, and he's only 26 years old. I don't think it's going to be Drummond because Andre Drummond still put up pretty good numbers this season with Detroit, but because the Pistons weren't winning, he wasn't voted into the All-Star game. And he's a more traditional center. And I don't really think that fans are going to vote for a traditional low-block center from the Cleveland Cavaliers to be in the All-Star game. So I don't think it's going to be Andre Drummond. And I don't think it's going to be Collin Sexton. Although I think Collin Sexton's a great player, and I think that he's definitely a building block for this team, I don't think Collin Sexton has the respect of anybody. I don't think he has the respect of the fans. I don't think he has the respect of the media. And I don't think he has the respect of the players. And as Devin Booker said, this is a political thing in the NBA. This is a popularity contest. And while Collin Sexton is a really good scorer, he doesn't have the passing vision. He doesn't have the passing skills. And I don't think that people respect him enough to vote him into the All-Star game. So I don't think it's going to be Andre Drummond. I don't think it's going to be Collin Sexton. I also don't think it's going to be Darius Garland. Because Darius Garland is still growing, and I highly doubt he'll be at that level come next season. It's not going to be Kevin Love, because I don't think Kevin Love's going to be here long enough to be an All-Star again. So that leaves me with one prominent name. The one person who I do think is going to be the next Cleveland Cavaliers All-Star. And that's Kevin Porter Jr. I think that of all the players on this team, Kevin Porter Jr. is the most likely to be the next Cavaliers All-Star. He has everything going for him. He's got the moves, he's got the excitement, and if he continues this upward trajectory, he will have earned enough respect from fans, media, players, everybody to get that, All-Star consideration. So, of all the players on this roster, I think Kevin Porter Jr. has the highest likelihood of being the next Cleveland Cavaliers All-Star, but we'll just have to see. Maybe Collin Sexton breaks out next season. Maybe Darius Garland breaks out next season. Maybe the Cavaliers draft somebody who is immediately great like Ja Morant, God willing, and that person could be the next All-Star for the Cleveland Cavaliers. But this has been the Mason Talk Sports Show. I want to thank you for tuning in once again. Have a great weekend, and I will see you same time, same place, Tuesday. Goodbye.
Are you dreaming of something greater? A college degree, better job skills, a rewarding career? The Ohio Army National Guard can help you get the education you need to land the career you've always wanted. The Ohio National Guard Scholarship Program could pay 100% of your college tuition at Lakeland Community College. You're eligible for the scholarship as soon as you enlist, and you can attend school while serving right here in Northeast Ohio. Learn more about these great benefits by calling Staff Sergeant Danielle Davis